On this edition of ITG, some history made by a Morgantown native, Wyatt Milam gets some national love, and Jed and I continue to revisit this attendance debate. All of that and more on this edition of In the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With Wes, Owen, and Jed.
I've got the best teammates in the business.
No way!
They both played the game. They both know the game. Owen is the runaway beer truck known for having some fun.
Owen Schmidt, you have a podcast In the Gun.
Owen Schmidt, like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
Jed is the signal caller who is the X's and O's and the brainiac.
Statistically, always punting on fourth down makes no sense.
So we've combined those two skill sets.
Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
You are In the Gun.
Once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 230 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I am Wes Schuler with the best teammates in the business as always. I got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, for this edition of ITG. And as always, we're brought to you in part by our friends at BetOnline. The game starts here. And Jed, we start with, obviously, Sunday night was the big game, Super Bowl 59. Of course, listen, every Super Bowl, there's always history, there's always legacies, there's always a lot on the line. But this one felt even more so. The Chiefs going for the three-peat, never been done before. Eagles looking to kind of cement themselves as one of the best teams of this era as well. Their third Super Bowl appearance in 8 years, second title in there as well. Obviously, a lot of big implications, a lot of big storylines, but one that hits home here for us on ITG is the Eagles do capture Super Bowl 59, their second in franchise history, is a congratulations in order to one of Morgantown's own, Autumn Lockwood, daughter of former Mountaineer defensive back and assistant coach David Lockwood, of course, who graduated high school in Morgantown. Autumn Lockwood did. She became the first black female coach ever to win a Super Bowl, as she is the Eagles assistant sports performance coach. Autumn Lockwood making history with a West Virginia tie, a Morgantown tie, a WVU football tie. Jed, no WVU players on that Eagles roster, but pretty stinking cool to see Autumn Lockwood make some history at the same time.
No WVU players in the roster, but we did get a text from Big O with a picture of him jumping over a New York Giant when he was a Philadelphia Eagle. And in the text, he told us, fly, Eagles, fly, or Eagles fly high, the whole slogan thing.
Yep.
Autumn Lockwood, that's terrific. David Lockwood is about as WVU as you can get from a pedigree standpoint, a critical piece to the 1988 team. Played here as a corner in the late 80s, of course, coached here and coached some really good football players. He's still coaching. He's had a productive coaching career, and it's close to my heart. I think it's kind of neat as a guy who, look, the reason or the source of my passion for the game of football. My dad played, but my dad kind of just watches it in passing. Like mom and dad always come up with the Super Bowl. It's one of our things, right? And dad's kind of a passive viewer. He likes watching a big game or so, and he gets into it. And he was a heck of a high school player. But mom is my source. Her dad was a high school football coach. She was the nerd about it all when I was a little kid. And she's really the one that got me amped up and started. My mom was. And, dad will hang out and watch a game kind of just to poke and prod and maybe instigate something with us. But mom is the reason that as a very young kid, I started becoming passionate about football and watched it from as far back as I can remember with my mom. They would make special rules for certain games. I was allowed to stay up late. And so when I see something like this, the first female black assistant coach, that's the kind of stuff that I think of. I think that's kind of a neat little wrinkle. I can't imagine how proud David Lockwood is. Of course, David Lockwood, close to a lot of members of this current staff, starting with Jeff Castile, right? So, but he's meant a lot to West Virginia. This family has meant a lot to West Virginia, as you talked about. Autumn, a University High graduate, right? So, that's the first thing I think of when I see stories like this. When I see women coaching football, knowledge is knowledge. Okay, communication is communication. If you can make a kid better, if you can make a player better, I'm saying a kid, but in this case, a man better, or if you can play some kind of role from a strategy standpoint, obviously every person on every staff contributes on some level to the success or failure of that staff and that team. And they're holding Lombardi for a reason, right? So they've done a heck of a job. He has to be terribly proud of her. And I just think it's a cool story. It's a cool story. But like I said, I always think of mom and the role that she's played and kind of bringing me around for this game to mean all these years later still mean so much to me as it has for the better part of my life.
Yeah, no, that's all well said. I'm glad you mentioned that too. I think you and I are in that same boat. I've told some of those stories about my mom. Look, my long story short, because I don't need to go into all this and bore everybody, but my biological father passed away when I was an infant. My mom got remarried years later, and I was very fortunate in that regard to have a stepfather who eventually adopted me and became my father, who I call dad, who has raised me like his own son. But I went from being about 2 years old to about 9 years old without having a dad. It was just my mom and I. And we were still in the blue lot every weekend. We were still, deciding to go to WVU games. She'd take me to Pirates games and Penguins games and Steelers games and all that stuff too. So I'm right there with you. My mom, funny story for you, Jed, my freshman year of high school was when the Steelers won Super Bowl 40. And that was, the first Super Bowl in 25 years for the Steelers. And it was the one for the thumb and the big deal and all that. My mom actually pulled me out of school. She lied to our secretary to the offices at my high school and said that I had a doctor's appointment to pull me out of school to take me to the Steelers Super Bowl parade my freshman year of high school. And then she felt so bad and so guilty about lying, the good Christian woman in her. She called back to high school and said, "I'm really sorry I lied. It was all me. Please don't be mad at my son. I did this, but I had to tell you the truth."
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
you and I both clearly had mothers that fostered our love of football, fostered our love of sport. I can't think of all the times my mom and I, drove to Morgantown together for football games, for basketball games. Like I said, whether it was a Penguins game, a Steelers game, a Pirates game, whatever. So I loved you sharing that. Had to piggyback on that. Shout out to all the moms. Shout out to all the women that have fostered a love of sports in this country. And a big shout out to University High's own Autumn Lockwood.
This will tell you how old I am, Wes. You talked about one for the thumb. All right. I remember the Joe Green T-shirts in 1981, one for the thumb in 81. I remember having one of those. Okay. But yeah, this is a little teaser for later in the show we're going to be talking about. My dad, he's a true Renaissance man. Okay. He was like I said, a heck of a football player, two-way player in high school on two undefeated teams back in the day. But he's also certified electrician, carpenter, gunsmith. He's built houses. He's built cars, for crying out loud. He ran a trap line. He's definitely one of the guys that, even though he's all about football on some level, but it's not his life, kind of like it is mine. He's one of the deer camp guys. You know what I'm saying? Like later in the show, we're going to talk about this. Like late in the season, if it comes down to deer camp, first day of gun season, and you're up there on a Saturday to get ready for Monday gun season opening or a Mountaineer game on a Saturday, well, trust me, Dad's going to be the deer camp. All right, that's not to say he wouldn't like to watch the Mountaineers, but he's going to be the deer camp guy. He's one of those guys with those priorities. But yeah, Mom and Dad were up here for the game. That was fun. Just get some wings going. Me and my oldest son do a little cooking. It's no big deal, but it's kind of a ritual we've had for many, many years now.
That's awesome.
And that was an interesting game. The only thing I'll say about this is the trend that the stat that keeps surfacing. I believe it's 6 or I think it's 7 times. This was the 7th time in Super Bowl history. And if you walk this through, game it through, it makes perfect sense. The Eagles did not blitz a single time. Now, first of all, let's identify the terms. Blitz means you're bringing more than 4 rushers. So, yes, there were times that they brought a linebacker, but a D lineman dropped into coverage, and they still only rushed 4. A blitz, by definition, is more than 4. They didn't blitz a single time all night. That is the 6th or 7th time in Super Bowl history that's happened. All 6 or 7 times, the team that didn't blitz has won the game. Makes perfect sense to me because when you're not blitzing, that tells me you're taking care of business at the point of attack and your defensive line is doing some work. It's playing some ball, and that's exactly what you saw happen with Philadelphia and that D-line. They didn't have to bring numbers because they were chopping wood with a 4-man rush. So it makes sense to me that the teams that haven't rushed, they've had that luxury of rushing forward and dropping numbers into coverage. Not everybody has that luxury. Usually, to generate that kind of pressure, you do have to bring extra numbers, but the Eagles did not, and the Chiefs did not have an answer. That was impressive.
It certainly was. I mean, the Eagles, both sides of the football, just dominated in the trenches. And you've seen the investment from, I mean, this goes back 6, 7, 8 years for the Eagles.
Yeah.
They have been investing in that offensive and defensive line since I was working in Philadelphia nearly a decade ago. And it's paid off for them. Like I said, 3 Super Bowls in 8 years. They've won 3 Super Bowl appearances in 8 years. They win 2 of those. And just, yeah, I mean, they just beat Kansas City up in the trenches all night. It kind of reminded me of when the Bucs did the same thing to Kansas City a few years ago, but even to another level. I mean, Kansas City could not get going, could not do anything. And yeah, I mean, Jed, it felt like every single person in green was making plays. Offense, defense, special teams, everybody in green was making plays. Nobody in white, nobody in white and red was making plays.
I mean, it was even when it was 10-0. Because we all know that the Chiefs have trailed by at least 10 in every game they've come back and won. But even when it was 10-0, it felt like a different 10-0. It was like, whoa, because there was a stretch, like the most amazing stat that I saw in that game, and one of the most amazing stats that I've ever seen in sports. They held the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes for the entire first half to 23 total yards.
Crazy.
The Chiefs had a first down on their first possession and not another one until the third quarter. I mean, they were absolutely. I mean, yeah, like you said, it was shades of the Bucs beating the Chiefs. There was also shades a little bit of that Giants front four that dominated the Patriots to upset the undefeated Patriots.
No doubt.
After the 07 season. It had shades of that. But when you have a physical, formidable, dominating defensive line, I don't care what level of football you're playing. Watch out if you put yourself in position in a one-game scenario to win a championship and that defensive line shows up, they can take over a football game, and boy, did they.
They sure did. They sure did. And so, listen, I know I've shared this on the show before too, but my wife and my in-laws are all from Philadelphia and South Jersey. My mother-in-law and father-in-law have been Eagles season ticket holders since the 80s. So happy wife, happy life. Congratulations to all the Eagles fans. And just remember, because you've all been having a problem with this lately, it's E-A-G-L-E-S when you go to spell it, all right? Everybody messing that up. The mayor, all the famous people around town, all right? Just Eagles, all right? It's a very easy pronunciation. Thanks to our friends at Toothman Ford for being a presenting sponsor of ITG as well. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. Jed, another headline here. Pro Football Focus has released their top 101 college football players from this past season, and we're going to do the thing, Jed. We like to rip on Pro Football Focus when it suits our argument. We like to use Pro Football Focus in our favor when it suits our argument. And we're going to do that this time because they have ranked Wyatt Milam the 18th best player in all of college football last season. Yes, that's top 20, number 18 overall, 0 sacks allowed, 0 QB hits allowed. The top 101 players in all of college football, Pro Football Focus, pardon me, I'm so excited I can hardly get it out, has ranked Wyatt Milam as the 18th best player in all of college ball last season. Pretty stinking cool. Listen, because again, Jed, like, whatever you think of Pro Football Focus, great, hate it, somewhere in the middle. We know that they grind the tape and do a ton of research and a ton of analytics and a ton of study. For one of our guys to be that high on the list, I think that speaks to the type of year he had and I think the type of hype that he's about to start getting here real soon as we approach the combine and the NFL draft.
Yeah, and you based on who you talk to or what you might hear, you hear rumors, and what are those worth this time of year? It's the season of disinformation, right? Leading up to the draft, we always talk about there's more disinformation than there is information, but rumors ranging from, sometime after the middle of round 1 to round 3. It's very difficult to say. It's difficult to forecast. He has the Senior Bowl behind him, but the Senior Bowl and what played out there kind of solidified what we'd already discussed previously on the show. What's obvious is he's going to be moving down inside. He's not going to be playing tackle. Now, that's not to say he can't be an emergency tackle, but his wingspan could hurt him at the tackle position. But he doesn't project as a tackle in the NFL. He projects optimally as either a guard or maybe even a center. And that's where he got his reps at the Senior Bowl. So it's nice to see him start repping that out with more consistency. And he's going to get some more opportunities. You'll see some of that when you're out there at the combine in Indy. I'm sure that's what he'll be doing, is playing some guard, playing some center, snapping the football, taking a step and seeing what he can do in pass pro. So those opportunities are going to come, but it's going to be interesting to see what kind of momentum he might be able to gain from this point moving forward to increase his stock and see what might happen in terms of where, in fact, he does go. I mean, it was difficult to project Zach last year because of the injury. You couldn't really read too much into that injury. You didn't know what was going to play out or unfold. People thought right away that was a calamitous injury. It was going to knock him to the third or fourth round. Well, we knew better than that. It's not to say you knew he was going to climb as high as he did, but same thing here. There's a lot of unknowns, but certainly hope for the best. Somebody's going to get a football player in Wyatt Milam, and I truly feel Wyatt Milam's the kind of kid with the kind of work ethic and the kind of character and what he's all about. He's going to be playing at the next level for a long time for somebody. And he has the versatility to settle down on the inside somewhere, but also be kind of a swing man at multiple spots. And that has to be appealing to personnel folks as well.
No, it absolutely is. I think of this all the time when I first moved from Philly back here to Pittsburgh, where I was born and raised, and from the Eagles to the Steelers. I had a longtime NFL scout tell me that more so than any other position group, teams are always looking to get better on the offensive line. Go ask whatever offensive line you think is the best in the NFL. Go ask their offensive line coach, would you like to get better? Would you like to add? And he'll still say yes, because it's just the nature of the position. Very rarely are you satisfied with all five guys. You're always looking to upgrade here or there. And, with that, I think we've seen some of these guys with the Wyatt Milam skill sets. I think of like a Graham Barton from Duke last year. I think of like a Troy Fautanu who from last year. Both of those guys ended up being first-round picks. Both played tackle in college. Graham Barton ended up moving inside. Troy Fautanu, in his brief stint before he got hurt, was still playing on the outside, but there was a lot of talk about how he could be a dominant guard if they decide to move him from tackle to guard. So the tackle that can still stand on an island by the Joe Alts of the world, right? They're always going to go in the top 10 of they're always going to go in the top 10 of the draft. But I think even for that second wave of guys who might be a little more tweener, there might not be the certainty like a Wyatt. It's still got a great chance to go in the first round. It might not be a top 10 or a top 15 pick, but still has a great chance to be a back half of the first round pick or an early second round pick. And to have 2 straight years of that for the program would obviously be huge. 2 straight years of it being guys from West Virginia, which would be huge. So very excited for Wyatt as this thing plays out.
A lot of coaches feel the transition moving from the outside down is a little easier in some ways than moving from the inside out.
No doubt.
To put yourself in that kind of space on that island to play that tackle spot. Now, that might take on a different dynamic if you're moving down to center, because that's just also a much different skill set. A lot more things are asked of you. But if you're moving down from tackle to guard, anywhere on the O-line is a game of leverage, of course, but it becomes a game even more of leverage on the interior when you're a guard. Strength is, in strange ways, going to matter even more. Bulk is going to matter more. So, but it's nice to be able to look at the numbers we just talked about. 0 sacks and 0 quarterback hits allowed. And they're talking about him as a guard. Well, he's played on the edge, oftentimes without an attached tight end. As a matter of fact, most of the time without an attached tight end to that side, against some very talented Big 12 pass rushers, against Penn State. And they're talking about maybe one of their pass rushers potentially being the number 1 overall pick. So he's played against very high-level competition from an edge rusher standpoint, holding his own at the tackle spot. And he has that resume and that portfolio to draw from as they're talking about, hey, can you maybe move down and help pass pro inside as well? We've seen what you can do on the outside. So the hard part's kind of behind you. Now can you transition down and play this style of football? So I'm really excited for Wyatt.
I am as well, too. And obviously we'll hope to have some Wyatt-centric episodes as we get closer to the end of the month. The Combine, just found out I'll be heading to Indianapolis Monday, February 28th. No, sorry, that's a Friday. Monday, February 25th, pardon me, which transitions nicely, Jed, because that also happens to be, you see that? I had the transition in my mind, but I completely botched it and went with February 28th, which is my birthday, which is the Friday at the end of the week. Your parents' anniversary, February. Listen, all the cool kids are born in February. All the big things happen in February, including February 25th, not just the day that I'll be reporting to Indianapolis for the Combine, but also the day that Rich Rodriguez and the WVU Mountaineers will be beginning spring ball, starting spring practice.
That's early. That's cold.
That's
you
real
want a hard
early.
edge.
That's real.
Get out there in the frost. Get out there in the snow. Get out there in the wind. That's how you start developing a hard edge, right? So, well, as we speak, this is going to drop on Wednesday. We're taping on Tuesday. I think we have 2 tour of duty sessions behind us, and already some things starting to be revealed about this cast of characters and this cast of players. Now, I have heard things said about some of the holdovers, some of the kids that were on last year's team and on previous teams. Look, there's really good kids populating that locker room, high character kids, good kids. And that's something that we've talked about how many times in recent years. I mean, that's one of the things that Neil Brown certainly did, was cultivate a great culture with great kids of high integrity in that room. And that's starting to show through now as they're being tested in different ways, but they're about to really continue to be tested in even bigger ways as this tour of duty continues. But to get rolling, February 25th, before you know it, you'll have pads cracking on the winter cold of Morgantown. And next thing you know, April 5th rolls around, and that's going to be in Morgantown. It's likely going to be a pretty chilly spring game as well. I'll tell you this, Wes, maybe the coldest I've ever been at Mountaineer Field. And I know we've had some cold ones. That backyard brawl comes to mind, but I remember being incredibly cold. I think Owen played in this game. It was at a spring game. I want to say 06. It was just unseasonably cold. You didn't expect it. Nobody really dressed for it. It was freezing cold. But anyway, that's going to foster some toughness too. I mean, already things are a little bit different in the most unusual of ways. You're going to be on the field out there cracking pads in February weather. And I don't think we've ever been able to say that. So that's a different kind of challenge. It's wow. Think about that. We're just a matter of weeks away from this, and we're going to be off and rolling. What's today?
Well, it's the 11th as we record this. It'll be the 12th. Yeah, I know. About 2 weeks. About 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
That's amazing. Spring ball in 2 weeks, and we said that the game's April 5th, which puts you in position to strategize and really line your targets up for that April 15th portal window, your final round of portal acquisitions and things opening up and coming and going. And so I like the fact that we'll be wrapping up with more than enough time to get ready for that. So that helps as well.
Completely agree. It might not be the most ideal situation for warmer weather, but I think schedule-wise and timeline-wise, it'll line up very nicely with this first Rich Rodriguez offseason and another obviously massive portal window. But yes, April 5th, hopefully this year we'll have an unseasonably warm spring game, because last year's weather was delightful, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, it was.
We have got to get to a break here. When we come back on the other side, we're going to follow up for a few minutes, revisit our attendance debate conversation, some of the comments and ideas that you all threw in there to help with the statistics that Jed unearthed last week about how WVU's attendance really struggles at the end of the season. We did all of that in our schedule announcement episode. If you missed that on our previous episode of ITG 229, the WVU football schedule is out. We combed through that. And we'll piggyback off of some of those things we discussed here on this episode to wrap things up on the other side. Jed Drenning, Wes Euler, you are in the gun.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, With more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
At Johnston Equipment, you'll find the area's best selection of Coyote tractors and loaders. Stop in and see all our compact equipment with multiple options available, including full cab, diesel, rubber tires, or track loaders. You'll find attachments and implements to get anything done, and low-rate financing options. Johnston Equipment has what you need to get the job done right. Come see the full line today at Johnston Equipment on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan, or visit johnstoneq.com.
Back in the gun here as we roll along on episode 230 of ITG, and it's time to follow up to revisit our attendance conversation, attendance debate that we had on our previous episode of In the Gun. Like I mentioned, episode 229, we did go over WVU's schedule as that was released, the 2025 Big 12 football slate released last week. So if you want all of our thoughts on that and how some of the things that broke in WVU's way, some of the things that are a little bit more challenging in that 12-game schedule, you can find that on our previous episode, like I said, 229. But with that, Jed, with his research, like he always has, he's always got the numbers, he's always got the data. I mean, remember, Neil Brown used to talk about it in his press conferences, for crying out loud. Jed's got all of his research, baby. And one thing that Jed found is that when we play those...
by the way.
Yeah,
I'm not the first, but go ahead.
You're not the first. But hey, you know, it's this time of year is when we have these conversations as well, too, when things are more open-ended. Yes. That, that last home game of the year, WVU, the attendance drops. They struggle. Even in years where the team is really good, the attendance in that final week doesn't necessarily fall off the face of the earth, but it's not as strong as you would expect it to be. Even 8-2 teams, 9-1 teams, things of that nature. Not like they're getting 30,000 people there, but they're not getting the juiced, crazy raucous crowd that you might expect as the season comes to a close. We got into some debates. We got into some conversations. We wanted your thoughts. We said that we were going to revisit this, and I promised. We saw your comments, a couple of you on YouTube yelling at Jed and I for cutting each other off last week. All right, we got a little excited. It happens. We're sorry. We get a little fired up from time to time. We will not do that this time. All right, we'll have a very civil, very.
Can't promise that. See, we're already going.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, exactly right. Cut me off again. See what happens. But Jed, it's actually funny too, because I had a couple family members who texted me about this as well. I've got an idea for you that I've been thinking about for the past week. But
nice.
Where you want to start this with some of the comments and some of the suggestions that we got from some of our listeners?
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I like that approach, because what I've done, it sounds like you've done something similar. I've kind of bounced this off of folks that I'm just out and about and around. Hey, what are your thoughts on this? Some people saw the show and they comment to me that's not in the comment section. So I have kind of a collection of ideas. So I want to hear yours as well. But let's start with the actual comments in the comment space. And feel free, you can still jump back to ITG 229. It just posted last week, and leave another comment, because this is something that we'll be looking at through the course of the off season. Look, Ren's aware of this. Ren Baker's aware of this. This challenge that we have, these 2 weekends, the weekend before and the weekend after. The weekend preceding Thanksgiving, the weekend after. And the reasons we've always heard, it's the first week of gun season. I get it. Trust me. I used to be one of those guys that was waiting Friday through Monday morning to be the first one out at first light. And the students are out of town, and it's spotty weather. You don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's terrible. So starting with the comments, in no particular order, Will Gregory, and we'll come back to something else Will Gregory suggested here when we discuss these other ideas. Will Gregory says, just win, baby. We get that part of it, and that's what we talked about. because we'll get into the three exceptions. That's what people jump right to. Oh, come on, three of the biggest crowds in history were that weekend. Before we can get to the comments, real quick, let's address that. Yes, we know the all-time stadium record against Miami in '93 was that weekend. Yes, we know in 1988 when we were 10-0 against a ranked Syracuse team trying to finish the season 11-0 for the national championship against Notre Dame. We had 65,000 there, the second biggest crowd of the year. Yes, we know in 2018 we were facing a ranked Oklahoma team and Kyler Murray, largest crowd of the year, 60,713. That was on November 23rd of 2018, one of these two very weekend. Those are the three exceptions. So either you win so much that you are literally playing for a championship that day, or it's not enough because 9-1 hasn't been enough, 8-2 hasn't been enough. So the answer to jump to just, hey, just win more games. Well, when you're 9-1 and there's 7,000 empty seats, the answer is not just win more games. Okay. You have to get creative. And like you talked about last week, Wes, it's not as though 7,000 empty seats is like 17,000. So it's a matter of degree. But what we're trying to do is find a reasonable way through some of these ideas to potentially close the gap. Can we turn a crowd of 43,000 that turns out to watch a 6-14 into 48,000? Can we turn a crowd of 53,000 when Owen was 9-1 playing South Florida into 57,000? Can we do something to cut into some of those empty seats? You're not going to jump 10, 15,000, but instead of just sitting here and taking it and saying it is what it is, and we have all these ideas that cost us absolutely nothing, but we're not going to try, let's at least discuss it. So Will Gregory says, just win, baby, and drop the capacity to make tickets more valuable. In other words, take the approach that maybe you take at a TCU or a Baylor. TCU put incredible renovations into Amon G. Carter Stadium about the time that we were entering the Big 12. They had 5 boosters make $160 million worth of donations to completely overhaul and renovate the stadium. Their seating capacity is still only in the 40s. So the ticket's at a premium. So it is worth more. And that could be the notion that you're trying to approach it with. Baylor, the same thing. When they opened up McLean Stadium, it doesn't seat 50,000, and it's in the 40s as well. And they usually have better crowds because of it, because I would imagine they're going to be struggling with 10 or 15,000 empty seats all the time at Baylor and TCU, sure, the private schools. So that's an idea. You could contemplate that. Maybe what you do is you take some of the current seating, turn it into luxury boxes that you can translate into revenue, cut the seating down. I don't know what the number might be. We did that before. I mean, used to think about it. The stadium record is 70,000 plus against Miami in '93. Now it only holds 60,000. Mm-hmm. So it's not the first time we've undergone such a renovation.
Took the open end zone, right, and turned it into the touchdown terrace.
That's what we did. That's what we did. So maybe you do it again. Maybe you drop into the mid 50s, the low 50s, whatever the number might be. I have no idea, but that's an idea. And it's not one I'm necessarily averse to. I'll entertain any of these ideas. And then we get down to Michelle Weintraub. Michelle agrees with Owen. Remember what Owen said? You know, free beer, buy one, get one free. He was all about the free food and the free this. That's not a bad idea. Michelle agrees with him. She says to get more people at the game, you have to give folks some free beer and food. Maybe another way might be to basically make everyone's ticket a raffle ticket and have a raffle with some signed memorabilia, maybe also for a special fan experience. The only thing is making the next weekend the special hunting weekend. So in other words, can we take the opening day of gun season? And she's not the only person to suggest this and move in.
That's what we need to do, actually. You're right. We need to talk to the legislators. We need to talk to the legislators and just get deer camp pushed back to December. That's the easiest solution to all this.
I think it might be easier, Wes, to get Independence Day in the United States changed from July 4th to July 12th.
That's exactly
right. Whatever. It might be easier, right, than changing the first day of gun season in West Virginia. But okay. And then we got Roger Raines. Roger says, here's some ideas. Family food discount packages, reduced beer prices, the same theme Owen was talking about, right? More bang for your buck with what you're consuming. Give away a tour of Pushkar Center, pictures on the field with players and coaches after the game. I would say if we win, trust me, you don't want to be taking a picture if we don't. Be down on the field to sing Country Roads for All. Delay it until the visiting team's gone for safety purposes. That's not a bad idea.
I don't hate that idea,
I like all
honestly.
These.
Yeah.
I like these. Yeah. Okay. Timothy Green was talking about the schedule.
That's an interesting of all the different things that we've always poked around and discussed and wait 15 minutes to play Country Roads, right? Let the other team get off the field, get everybody down onto the field, and then interesting.
it makes my life easier because of the post-game interview. I'm always battling against country roads, right? Like I knew that Neil wanted to be part of it, for
But
crying out loud. Rich is the one who started it, right? So I can't imagine what it's going to be like trying to get an interview before country roads. But
the only thing that I will say about that, though, now that we're just talking this out, because I love that idea of like going down there, and that would be really cool.
yeah, yeah.
The one thing it would kibosh, though, is my favorite part about country roads is when the other team is still walking off the field and has to hear it
That's
for the
true.
first,
That's true.
when Pat Narduzzi and what's his face, Phil can't throw the ball, Jerkovich, have to hang their heads and hear country roads as they're walking back to our concrete jungle locker room.
How about this?
I would miss that.
Let's carve that out. How about we wait 15 minutes to sing country roads for every opponent except Pitt?
Yeah, there you go.
And we do it right away. Everybody, come on down. Right? Yeah.
In fact, soon as
sing it right in Narduzzi's ear if you want to.
Soon as we take a knee down, there's still 20 seconds left in the clock. I don't care. Hit that country roads, baby.
Yeah. So we're on to something. Make a note. We're on to something there. Thank you, Roger Raines. Okay, like I said, Timothy Green was commenting on the schedule. He likes the schedule. Okay. Big Red WV2, baby faced Joe. I shaved. Can you imagine if Owen shaved? That I don't know if I can handle that.
So Big Red was talking about you shaving. I didn't know if
Yes.
Big Red was talking about me asking you who's this baby face, meaning like who am I?
No.
Because I always get called the baby face, but I guess
I'm
that
pretty
makes
sure
sense too.
That's true because I
like
messed with my wife. It usually takes my wife 2 or 3 days. What's different about you? That kind of thing. And trust me, I'm not making a fashion statement. I'm just lazy. I don't like shaving every day. Otherwise, anyway. And then
I'm 30. I'm 34 years. I'm 34 years old, and I still get called babyface. Keep it coming, baby.
Shout out here to Buck Robinette. I want to think back to this. I know what he's talking about. Well, I mentioned Jalen Daniels being gone in the quarterback situation at Kansas because they weren't active in the portal market. He says, Jed, I think Daniels is back for Kansas. And you know what? I think you're right. Let's talk about that for a second. Wes, you and I were discussing this. Remember the circumstances under which Jalen Daniels gave up his redshirt opportunity? It's like you could play, at the time it was 4 games. Okay, well, he played in 3. The last game was like Lance Leipold's first year. It was a huge win on the road against Texas, the Jared Casey overtime win. Well, the next game was to close out the regular season against West Virginia. We were in Lawrence, and he had a chance to sit that out and take his red shirt, but he didn't. He played against us and lost the red shirt. So somewhere in the mix, it does, in fact, you're right, Buck, it does, in fact, look like Jalen Daniels. You can tell I haven't done my off-season entirely deep dives into these other Big 12 opponents. I've just taken superficial looks, but you are right. Based on what I can tell, it does look like Jalen Daniels could be back. He's injured. He may have had surgery. It could impact his involvement in spring ball, but thank you for pointing that out. Campbell 2218. He thought you were from Doddridge County. You were giving a shout out to your Doddridge County people. Okay.
In spirit, I am.
My
In
comments
spirit,
up
I am.
here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Greg Solansky. We were just talking about you and your Doddridge County people. Speaking of Doddridge County folks.
That's right.
Greg and I were talking about West last week. Mutual friend. Okay. Donnie Spradling says have a gun raffle and give away 1 gun for every point scored. I'll tell you what. That's like giving away cigarettes in prison, giving away guns in West Virginia. Somebody told me recently, cigarettes aren't the currency in prison any longer. Stamps are. Have you heard this? Yeah, somebody that worked in a prison actually told me that. I guess stamps are the new cigarettes.
Well, all these kids
last week.
All these kids are vaping now, Jed. So obviously cigarettes are 1999.
Well, now we're talking about 3 different things at once. But something happened. This is a conversation that this guy.
So what? Because they're writing letters to their loved ones or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. And you're only allowed so many. So what you have to do, the rest are contraband. You have to hide them under your whatever it might be, toilet pillow. I don't know. But what prompted this conversation? I remember last fall there was a guy up on press level, and Tony and I bumped into this guy, Creedy and I, and this guy told us, I don't know how this started, but this guy worked at Hazleton, the federal prison outside of Morgantown on 68. Tough place. Of course, Whitey Bulger met his demise there. He wasn't even their famous gangster Whitey Bulger that they've made movies about. the infamous Whitey Bulger. He was there less than 12 hours before they got him and took him out. Well, this guy worked there, and he was the guy who performed CPR on Whitey Bulger. And he told Tony and I the story.
Dang.
And he's like, if you can even call it that, he said, because what I found when I was summoned in there, you couldn't perform CPR on. But that started this prison conversation. We're way off track here. Okay. Anyway,
let me get us back. Let me get us back on track with a thank you to our friends at Ball Up Top, to our friends at Fortis and our guy Rick Lewis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. And yeah, Jed, I told you before we started recording. I mean, like my mom's side of the family is from Doddridge County. My dad's side of the family is from central Pennsylvania, Carlisle area. All right. So you want hunters, I got hunters. And I had an uncle who texted me and was like, hey, love the episode, enjoyed the back and forth, but there's nothing you could do to get me to skip deer camp. You know?
See, that's my dad. Yeah. Unless one of his kids is being honored or something like that, right? Other than that, you can forget it. So here we go. JCV 6988. He's the one who gave us the slapping. Okay. He backhanded slapped us. Wes and Jed, both you guys got to quit interrupting each other, even if you all disagree with each other. That arguing isn't very entertaining. Look, JCV, it's not by design. It's just who we are. We get passionate about something. I'll try and be better, but I know I'm going to fail at this. I just know I am. Sometimes I'm just going to get too animated. I'm going to want to. Wes, see, here's what ends up happening. Wes and Owen, and we all do this to each other. I'm not thinking of something, and then Wes will say something and immediately sparks a thought. And I know at my advanced age, I forget something. If I have to hold on to it for 90 seconds, I just forget it and my mind goes somewhere else. I'm like, I have the attention span of a ferret on speed, right? So I just jump in and say it. And I think Wes does the same thing. So, but you're right. That's not polite. That's not cordial. And it's probably hard on the ears at times. I apologize. You are absolutely right. That's not gone unnoticed. Our lack of pulling it off isn't for lack of effort. We've had the conversation. You're not the first person to make a comment like this. We get it. If we were a little more professional, which of course we're not, that would be priority 1, 2, and 3. We'll work on it. Thank you very much. And then again, Donnie Spradling comes back in and says, hey, send me one of those free tickets that weekend and I will see you in Morgantown. All right. Well, that's not a bad segue, Wes, for some of the other ideas. Okay. If you want to jump in with some of what you got, because that's some of what we're about to talk about here.
Yeah. And listen, I think all these, you and I, we outlined this on the last episode, this episode, winning certainly helps. And there's also there's not going to be, listen, marketing people have been trying to figure out how to get more butts and seats at sporting events for decades, right? Jed and I aren't going to suddenly reinvent the wheel here. But I do think there's a couple things that you can do, like you said, to just boost that number on average, whatever. If the number's this when we have 6 wins, add 5,000. If the number's this when we have 8 wins, add 5,000. If we're competing for a berth in a Big 12 championship or something like that, you hope that just about every single ticket is sold. Free food, free beers, buy one, get one, tickets, all those things. I think all of that matters. But I've really been thinking about this, right? Because, like I told you, your dad, my uncles, some people, hunting is just their favorite thing in life, and that's going to be their first priority. And I don't want to knock those people because, Jed, I told you on the last episode, aside from my family, aside from my friends, aside from my finances and my health, WVU is probably the thing that I care about most. So there's no other thing that you could pull me within reason, right? You could say, oh, so you wouldn't miss a WVU game for the birth of your child? Okay, I'm talking other within reason entertainment options. There's nothing I would rather do than go to a WVU football game. Not some experience somewhere, not some other sporting event, not hunting, not camping out in the woods, nothing. But the thing that I like, probably from an entertainment perspective, probably right behind going to WVU games, number 2 on the list for me, and hockey games, I guess hockey games would probably be number 2, is concerts. Like I love going to concerts. I go to concerts all the time. even you, Jed, you could tell me right now I could sit on stage with Bruce Springsteen, and that might get me to skip a WVU football game, but that would probably be about it. But I'm thinking about all this, and I came back to, I mentioned how I'm a big hockey fan as well too. Grew up playing hockey. I love hockey. The Pittsburgh Penguins every year do this thing called the last home game of the year is shirt off our backs night. And we had one of the people in the comments who said essentially your ticket is a raffle, right? That's how this works is everyone who buys a ticket to the Penguins game, it gets entered into a raffle. And when the game is over, all 21 Penguins or whatever that are on the roster, they literally call the names of the people and have you come down. You get to shake the person's hand. You get to take a picture. And then Sidney Crosby takes the jersey off his back and gives it to you, signs it, picture. You get to go home with it for all 21 guys on the Penguins roster.
That's
now,
awesome.
The Penguins in the last 20 years have been pretty stinking good. They've had Crosby, they've had Malkin, they've won 3 Stanley Cups. But I remember even being younger in those years between Lemieux and Crosby, between Yager and Malkin, those 4 or 5 years where the Penguins were really bad, and they were getting 7, 8, 9, 10,000 people at the games every night. They would have 16, 17,000 people for the final game of the season because you knew, man, I might leave here with Marty Straka's jersey. I might leave here with Jaromir Jagr's jersey. I might leave here with Garrett Green's jersey. I might leave here with Zach Fraser's jersey. I might leave here with Wyatt Milam's jersey.
Your buddy might. Your buddy might. That's kind of cool too. You know?
That is, in the past week of racking my brain, what could really get me to be like, because it's hard for me to put myself in that situation because I would rather go to the WVU game above anything else.
Yeah.
But man, like I might skip a WVU game to go to a Penguins game if I knew there was a chance that I was walking home with Sidney Crosby's jersey. You know what I mean? Like shirt off your backs. I know that's a lot of jerseys. I know a college roster is big. Maybe you couldn't do it for 100 guys. You'd have to figure out, okay, your 22 starters plus these other, maybe you do 40 guys or 50 guys or whatever the number is. But if you knew that there was a chance that you could be called down onto the field, get that jersey, have the person sign it for you. Geno Smith and Tavon Austin are going to take off their jerseys, sign them, take a picture with you, and then you get to walk out of the stadium with that jersey. I think that would get some people interested because we all know, Jed, sports fans, they love jerseys. They love memorabilia. They do the equipment sale and the lines all the way out the Caperton indoor practice facility, right? I think that's something that people would really, hey, maybe it's gloves and shin pads and things like that too, cleats, whatever. I think if you put an apparel element in there as well, a game-used apparel element, people go crazy for that stuff. So that's my big idea that I came up with over the last week. Shirt off our backs night.
I love that idea. Here's how you could structure it. You could say, all right, let's go with our entire 2 deep. 44 players, and you're going to give away 44 jerseys. Whatever you want to do to get the number up there, it's significant. I love that idea. That's a terrific idea. So
the 40,
you're
real
truly
quick,
onto something there.
And sorry, Jed, I didn't mean to interrupt you. All right, I want to tell. I'm sorry to our
Please
listeners.
Do.
The 44 would work out well nicely, as that number's now retired across the university. If you're watching on YouTube, you see my Jerry West 44. Right. So that might even just be a nice West Virginia That's 44. Cool. There's just something to that number.
That's kind of cool. That's a great point. So maybe something like that. Yeah, I really like that approach. Now, speaking of hockey, again, thinking of different things that you could do. You mentioned a few minutes ago, and this is what's critical to it. It's all about putting a dent in the number. You're not going to come up with some miraculous resolution to any of this. Okay, you're not going to jump from 43 to 58. But you talked about it. You've worked at the minor league level. There's a reason that you do these promotions. It might feel frustrating. It might feel like you're not putting a dent in it, but you absolutely are, relatively speaking, or you wouldn't continue to do it at every minor league organization everywhere in the free world. It makes a little bit of a difference or they wouldn't do it. So can we, in fact, make that difference? So continuing with the hockey thing, what if, in fact, you have a 15-minute, because, again, halftime's not that long. You throw an ice rink onto the field, 15 minutes to assemble it, tear it down, the whole thing. You have a WVU alumni hockey game played in 15 minutes right there in front of the crowd. That's just thinking out loud, trying to be different.
Only if I get to skate.
Only if you get to skate. That's exactly right. You might stand out if it's alumni, Wes. If it's out there with a bunch of 45-year-olds, right? You might be slapping right past them, right?
Or Jed, if they're recent alumni that played for the club team, then they'd be skating circles around me.
So I doubt that has much sizzle. Okay, so let's talk about some other things, and maybe this is where you get to where you combine possibly different things. I've even had staff members suggest to me, well, hey, how many Little League football players or Pop Warner football players are in the state of West Virginia? I've said this on this podcast before. My first game I attended, my first Mountaineer game, was with the Davis Thomas Rams, September 18th, 1982. Easy to remember. Why? The Oklahoma game in Norman was September 11th, 1982. So we got our big win to open the season against number 9 ranked Oklahoma. We came back home to face Boomer and the Terps. We beat them 19-18. September 18th, 1982, the entire Davis Rams football team was laying on the field behind the end zone. Rich Hollins caught the winning touchdown from Haas. His sweat beads flew in our face. We were so close. So what if you invite every Pop Warner football player and coach across the entire state and say, look, we're going to have kind of concert style seating for the upper half of the student section. It's open to first come, first serve. We're going to set aside X amount of tickets, because at the end of the day, one of the things you want to do with this endeavor is, I said this at the close of the show last week, I want to have a home field advantage at Mountaineer Field every time we play at Mountaineer Field. Not every time, except kind of sort of these 2 weekends. Okay, we can't rely on being 9-1 or 10-0, one of the best teams in the history of the sport. Sometimes you're going to be 7-3 or 8-2, and you need help. That's what I'm trying to do here. So if you can even get more butts in the seats to scream and cheer and provide that home field, they're buying concessions, they're still spending money. So that's a win across all the parameters. So if you can do the same thing even with high school players. Maybe you can have some quasi-recruiting weekend. I get into the logistics of what the NCAA will and won't allow, but maybe you do the same thing there. It's a ticket giveaway for them, their parents, whatever, their coaches. Look into that. So maybe you combine some of that, okay? But also, back to Will Gregory. Will Gregory mentioned to me that in addition to what he was saying about maybe reduce the capacity, maybe what you could do is you could have an opportunity afforded to every West Virginia fan. Hey, do you want to renew your vows with your spouse? Here's a chance to do it. Here's a chance to do it. Show up for this game. Charles Wesley Godwin, because it seems like every time we're in trouble, we have to reach out to Charles Wesley Godwin, right? He's our savior. So we're going to have Charles Wesley Godwin at halftime with his guitar set up on a stage. He's going to tell you and your spouse, he's going to say into the mic, the vows that you say to your spouse. Repeat after me. So Charles Wesley Godwin is telling you the vows to say to your spouse. So there's the renew them. Maybe these are original or new ones, whatever you want to call it. And then what can happen is after Charles then plays a song and serenades you, of course, to kind of close the deal. Mm-hmm. And then after the game, you're allowed on the field for pictures to commemorate the moment. And then finally, in the indoor practice facility, there's a reception to host all the people who take part in this. And at the end of the reception, you're giving away however many you want to do it. A ticket, an all-paid expense trip to West Virginia's bowl game with you and your significant other. You can do 5 of these. You fly on the team charter or even plane 2, like Tony and I sometimes do. You stay at the team hotel. Everything's paid for. You got meal vouchers. You might even have a meal with the team, okay, as a giveaway to wrap up the ceremony at the indoor practice facility after you got to renew your vows with Charles Wesley Godwin and your wife, and he plays a song for you. I think that's kind of cool. I don't know, but I'm just trying to stray outside the box. Can that turn 43,000? Can you get 2,500 couples to get 5,000 more people to do that? Can you? I don't know the answer. There's only one way to find out because, again, it's free, right? I mean, if you position this appropriately, it's not going to cost you anything. So what do you stand to lose from any of these ideas? I like all these ideas, but what I don't like is just sitting back and saying, it is what it is. We can't possibly increase it at all. It's been this way since 1980. We've seen it. It's just the nature of the beast. Why even try to address it? No, let's at least go down with our boots on here. Let's see what we can do to increase it, to enhance it, to play the role of that, that minor league baseball promoter. And again, I have the list right in front of me, and I'm looking at every game played on those 2 weekends from 1980 through 2024. I'll reiterate the numbers. We've played 34 games since 1980 on those 2 weekends. Sometimes we don't have a game on either of those 2 weekends, so it doesn't work out perfectly, right? This year we have Texas Tech, of course. But 34 times it's happened. 62% of those 34 games has been the lowest crowd of the year. 82% of those 34 games has been the lowest or second lowest crowd of the year. And I've mentioned this already. I hate to belabor the point, but we're talking an 8-2 team that played in front of the smallest crowd of the year, a 9-1 team that played in front of 7,000 empty seats. This isn't just because you're 3-7. We had a backyard brawl, and this might frustrate me the most, in which we were 7-3 against number 8 ranked Pitt.
My freshman year of college.
That wasn't sold out. There were 4,000 empty seats for that.
Jed, yeah, I know that. You want to know why?
Why you know that?
The day of that game, I got like 4 of my buddies from high school, non-Pitt fans, okay, don't worry. 4 of my buddies from high school. I was down in Morgantown, and that was like a 7:00 game. And I was like, guys, there are free tickets everywhere. If you guys could get down here, I got you tickets to the game. And 4 of my buddies came down to Morgantown. One from Penn State, one from Ohio State, one from Kent State, one who didn't go to college. That's how many tickets were readily available for that game. It was my freshman year. I was texting my buddies. I was like, hey, because they're 80 minutes away and home from college and bored. And I'm like, if you guys are looking for something to do today, you want to come down and tailgate and, we'll crash down here tonight. I got you tickets. So I did I brought four extra people into Milan Pushkart Stadium that day. You're welcome.
So otherwise it would have been 56,119.
That's right. That's right.
You got it to 123. But it was one of my great memories of standing next to Stu and Bittencourt's field goal sailed through. It was terrific. But I mean, look at this. Even there's some backyard brawls. Now, again, in 95, we're 4-6. So there's 38,000 people there. Come on, 4-6 or not. 97, we're 7-3, and there's 48,000 people there. Backyard brawl again, 40,000, 1999. Now, you shouldn't have to go to the record. Are you telling me? I don't care what the record is. It's a backyard brawl. Are you telling me you can't take that from 40 to 46 or 47 by doing something? It's the backyard brawl. I don't care if you're both 1-10. Are you kidding me? There has to be something you can do about that. And that's why we're having this conversation. That's why we now committed it, kind of an episode and a half to it. So it's worth the discussion. We'll continue this, but of course, the low standard bearer was let me look at it. It was the 27,000 that we so often point to. Here we go. 1992, Louisiana Tech, 27,751. The last game of the year. We were 4-2 going into that game. So it's a challenging weekend, and we talked about it last week, Wes. It's for obvious reasons. It's not like there's not legitimate cause for this. And a huge number of the fans that you're so accustomed to drawing from are out of town. The students are gone. Of course, the natural thing to play out is you're going to see your number take some kind of hit. And of course, West Virginians love to hunt. That's a huge week for West Virginians. If you grew up here, you understand that. Even Southwestern PA, you understand that. So what can you do instead of just sitting back and taking it to address it, spice things up, and at least try and make it interesting enough to add X amount to whatever crowds we're talking about on my frustrating list here? Understandable, but frustrating list.
Yeah, hey, you're speaking my language. Because again, like I've told you, it's hard. Like I can't relate. I mean, because I don't choose. Again, other than those 4 pillars of my life, family, friends, finances, and health, I don't choose anything else over WVU athletics. Now, that might be a me problem, okay? Like, I'm not saying that that's the way everybody should be. I'm not saying that that's healthy or anything.
Right.
Like that.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, don't follow our priorities. No, you don't want to do that. Let's see, you got family. You got, okay, somewhere here, Star Wars is going to make an appearance. Obviously, football's toward the top of the list. So, yeah, don't emulate us. We're not saying we're right. We're not saying we're right at all. We're just saying, what can we do to be a little more creative and at least make this a moving target instead of just sitting there and watching 15,000 empty seats at the largest sporting facility in the state of West Virginia consistently each year if we're not 9-1.
Correct. I'm with you on that. Listen, like I've said many times, I said this on the last episode, people are allowed to have their priorities in life. And it's not just as simple as like, oh, you guys are choosing hunting over the Mountaineers when the Mountaineers play 6 home games a year. That's it. How dare you? You know what I mean? Like, I know it's not that cut and dry. There's the student
I turn
thing.
that one back,
There's
Wes.
Thanksgiving. There's a lot going on.
And of course, I'm interrupting you, but I turn that one back. There's only one opening day to gun season a year. I get that. So that's the counter argument to that. You say there's only 6 games a year. Well, there's only one opening day.
Okay, but how long? How long
Tuesday
is
or Wednesday you work?
Yeah, no, totally. But I would
It's
also
not the
add,
same.
Jed, there's also only one backyard brawl, and now again, I know the schedule now is different.
Yes.
It's in September, and there's going to be a 3-year high. But in those games that you mentioned, there's one backyard brawl in Morgantown every 700 some days, once every other year. So
yeah,
if the opening day at Deer Camp is bigger than that to you, you are allowed to have your priorities in life, but you better not be the person who's online making fun of Pitt fans for not going to the games either.
Yeah, that's
you're
true.
doing it because you're
That's
doing
true.
it. You're doing it yourself. You're no better. Well, again, I don't want to make it. I don't want to make it shit. I don't want to shame the people for having their priorities thing. But I also do think I sit in a position where it's like I choose everything over or nothing besides my family and my job over WVU football games.
If it's a wedding or something like that, well, you need to revisit your friends list, because if they're having fall weddings, that's a different conversation anyway. But
no doubt. And that's for me, I mean, especially like, you know how many weddings this past year was between I spent 3 years with the Eagles and this was my 7th year with the Steelers. So I've worked in NFL football for a decade now, which, wow, that sounds crazy to say out loud. You know how many weddings I've missed over the last decade of my life of people getting married in September and October and November.
As many as you could.
Again, Jed, people are allowed to have their priorities. If you want to get married in October in the fall foliage, you go for it. Just know that your buddy Wesley ain't going to be there. I already know I'm missing 2 weddings in September. One that's my cousin's and one that's one of my good buddies. I ain't going to be there. Newsflash: the Steelers are going to be playing games. So even if it's a home game, I can't go out of town for a weekend. It is. Everyone's got their schedule. Everyone's got their priorities. But clearly, Jed and we have WVU football, and that atmosphere and those 6 home dates is a pretty big priority. And we're just trying to spread the gospel.
What if you get married on the field at halftime? That was suggested to me, but here's the issue. The logistics
real quick.
of getting the teams in and out. That's a challenge.
I was going to say that about, as much as you know, as a hockey guy, I love your idea of you're not getting an ice rink built and torn down in 15, 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, it's
That's right.
The logistics of it and freezing ice and all those different things. But my wife and I in the summer of 2016 tried to get married on Mountaineer Field, but that's when they were doing the big turf renovation. And so we couldn't do it. That's why Big Daddy got us in to take our engagement pictures there, and then we got married at the Alumni Center. But yes, that's how much of a psycho I am. I actually tried to get married at Mountaineer Field in the summertime.
Could you do it after the game with Country Roads playing in the background on the field?
Sweet. That'd be pretty sweet.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah. Now, here's the only problem.
So, in other words, here's what you do, Wes. You could fold this into what we were talking about, renewing your vows. Well, that same day, you have the opportunity, if you're just engaged and you're not married, after the game, you can get married. Let's say you have one minister, okay, right there at the 50-yard line. As Country Roads is blaring in the background, you better be quick.
Each of your parents too. You get 2. 4 people can go with you. All right, down onto the field. No, listen.
Nobody's going to stop me I'm so far outside the box now. I can't see the box.
You know what? The next part of this,
I just like these ideas people are coming up with.
Not on this next episode because we need to get on, but at some point in this offseason, I want to look and see some other programs that are kind of positioned like WVU is.
Yes, I agree.
State College,
I'd say
Blacksburg.
Yes.
Yes.
Good examples, because they also hunt, right?
Like
So
Columbus, Ohio
matters.
doesn't count. That's a city. Pittsburgh doesn't
it
count.
doesn't.
That's a city.
No.
Even though they hunt in those areas, they still have urban, urban, big, dense populations. That'll be the next part of this. But continue to comment and let us know what you think about any of the things we've suggested or any new suggestions you might have.
K-State's a good one.
K-State's Manhattan's a really good one as well, too. A final thank you to our friends at Johnson Equipment, where you can get 0% financing for 72 months, plus a free loader on select Coyote models in stock. You got to visit Johnston Equipment on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. This was fun, Jed. I enjoyed this. Some good headlines, some good spirited debate. Maybe once or twice, but we did a much better job of not cutting each other off this time, all right? We'll keep that.
Let's ask JCV. Give us some response and feedback. We know we still did it, but did we do it as much? Did we at least mitigate it some?
Yeah.
And
Carl
told
me to quit interrupting the adults. All right, so Carl, let me know how I did this time. All right, and again, people think that calling like I'm 34 years old and I look like I'm 12 is an insult, buddy. When I'm 60, like we're gonna see who's laughing. All right, I'm 34 years old. I still get carded buying booze, baby. I mean,
there's typically no adults on this show. So let's make that clear.
You're only young once, but you can be immature forever. And I think that's a good way for us to wrap this thing up. Jed, this was a lot of fun. Big thanks to Skylar, our producer / co-host, for throwing this all together. The big beer truck, Big O, who got caught in a little bit of a snowstorm tonight, but he'll be back with us soon. Mountaineers up 6 late on BYU on the hardwood as we record this. Hopefully they'll hang on and we'll be able to do some around campus, talk about our men's and women's teams in March Madness here before too much longer. But for the signal caller, Jed Drenning, I am Wes Euler. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. The one thing we ask of you, other than participating in this conversation, is to be in here and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. You've been In the Gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.